Good evening, and welcome. Tonight, the political world isn't just reeling, it's been fundamentally reshaped. For years, we've watched a seemingly endless conflict unfold. The veteran political operator, Adam Schiff, pitted against the unprecedented force of Donald Trump. The battle lines were drawn. The evidence, or so we thought, was all on the table. But this week, everything you believed about this saga has been thrown into complete disarray. Because in a stunning, calculated move, Donald Trump did not just issue a denial. He dropped a piece of evidence, a document facilitated by the digital heavyweight himself, Elon Musk. It's the kind of reveal that stops a courtroom, that silences an entire chamber. And it forces one of the former president's most consistent adversaries, Adam Schiff, to face a single, chilling reality. The evidence he relied on, the narrative he built, the very foundation of his public case, was flawed. What is this evidence? How did Elon Musk get involved? And what does this extraordinary development mean for the future of American politics? Stay with us. This is the moment that changes everything. The sheer drama of this moment cannot be overstated. We've spent years watching this high-stakes political chess game, a narrative dominated by investigation, accusation, and deeply polarized rhetoric. And in the center of that rhetoric, for the better part of a decade, has been Adam Schiff. He became, for millions of Americans, the face of the opposition. The man who held the evidence, who possessed the unshakable conviction that Donald Trump represented a clear and present danger to the democratic process. His performance during the impeachments, measured, forensic, seemingly in possession of a full set of facts, was central to how the public understood the Trump investigations. But a successful narrative, like a successful prosecution, depends entirely on the integrity of its initial premise. If that premise is compromised, the entire structure falls apart. That is precisely the fault line that Donald Trump and his new, unlikely ally, Elon Musk, appear to have struck. Let's talk about the evidence itself. It did not emerge through a formal legal proceeding. It did not come from a congressional hearing. It came from X. And the specific nature of this bombshell? It relates to the core of the original intelligence and surveillance claims that kicked off much of the congressional scrutiny, the very concerns Schiff built his reputation upon. The claim, which had been simmering as a fringe theory for months, was that key pieces of raw data, allegedly showing collusion or misconduct, were not what they seemed, that they were either incorrectly interpreted or worse, intentionally manipulated before reaching the highest levels of oversight. Enter Elon Musk. The CEO's acquisition of the social media platform gave him unprecedented access to internal archives and, critically, internal communications surrounding the initial intelligence, sharing, and content moderation policies from years past. We're talking about the deep, archived, back-end conversations between government officials, former platform executives, and intelligence community contractors. Musk's legal team, reportedly acting in concert with the Trump camp, released a batch of communications, dubbed the integrity files, that show, in cold, hard text, an exchange where a key piece of raw intelligence, a communication intercepted years ago, was shared with an agency before being flagged as potentially unreliable. The critical finding within these newly released communications, the one that makes Schiff look stunned and exposed, is the existence of a contemporaneous memo. This memo, written by a mid-level platform executive at the time, explicitly warned that the original surveillance data had a high probability of being a spoof or an intentional fabrication designed to mislead. The memo was then internally flagged and, according to the new documents, never made its way to the congressional intelligence committees. This means that Adam Schiff, in his official capacity, was operating under the assumption that a crucial, early piece of evidence was genuine, when internal corporate and intelligence documents, which now exist, explicitly labeled it as highly suspicious, if not outright fake. The response from Trump was classic theater. He didn't just release the files, he did it with a theatrical flourish, posting a one-sentence quote from the newly revealed memo. "The flag is synthetic." A clear message, in the starkest terms. You, Mr. Schiff, relied on synthetic evidence. The impact of this cannot be overstated. This is not about winning a political debate on cable news. This is about the credibility of oversight. It is about the legal and ethical foundation of years of investigation. Adam Schiff is now in the impossible position of having to explain why he continued to pursue a line of inquiry based on data that his own colleagues, if they had seen this memo, would have dismissed as likely compromised. His entire reputation, painstakingly built on the notion of having all the facts, has been called into question by a single, verifiable digital timestamp and a three-word warning. The flag is synthetic. The political earthquake has already begun. This is where the story pivots from a traditional political scandal to a 21st century hybrid. We have to address the key architect of this revelation, Elon Musk. His role here is more than just that of a platform owner. He is an agent of digital disruption, armed with the keys to an archive that holds years of sensitive, private communication and data that crossed the boundary between corporate oversight and government interface. When Musk took control of X, formerly Twitter, he promised transparency. He promised to lift the veil on the mechanisms of content moderation and the shadowy processes that dictated what the public saw, and, critically, what was actively suppressed or flagged. The integrity files, as they've been branded, are the fulfillment of that promise, but with a profoundly political and devastating twist. They're not just about platform policy. They are about the weaponization of the flow of information. The specific documents that have stunned Adam Schiff, the internal memo flagging the intelligence as synthetic, were found deep within the platform's archives, tied to early communications with government contractors. Musk's legal team argued, successfully, that these files were essential to understanding the history of the platform's relationship with U.S. intelligence bodies and were therefore, in a larger sense, relevant to public interest and transparency. Now, consider the power dynamic. Donald Trump, the target of years of investigation, now has the world's most influential and arguably most erratic billionaire as an ally, providing him with documentary evidence that no traditional legal subpoena or Freedom of Information Act request could ever have unearthed. It's an entirely new model of political warfare, the weaponization of private corporate records against a political adversary. The immediate political fallout is immense, and it hits three distinct areas. First, the credibility crisis for Adam Schiff. The core of Schiff's political persona was trust. He built his reputation as the serious, fact-based counterpoint to Trumpian chaos. He consistently stated that he possessed evidence, often classified, that validated his claims of collusion and misconduct. If a key, early piece of that underpinning evidence was internally noted as a likely fabrication, and that warning was withheld from his committee, it does not just weaken his past arguments. It dismantles his image as the ultimate arbiter of truth. His past statements, once taken as gospel by his supporters, now face intense scrutiny. Did he know? Was he misled? Or did he simply accept the information that fit his political objectives, without asking the critical questions? Second, the legal and legislative earthquake. These files don't just prompt political debate, they demand a new investigation. If intelligence was deliberately introduced that was known to be compromised, the focus shifts entirely. Who wrote the memo? Who received it? And, crucially, who was responsible for ensuring it was not shared with Congress? The House is already moving. We are seeing calls for immediate hearings, not to debate the facts of the investigation, but to investigate the integrity of the intelligence itself. This fundamentally shifts the narrative from Trump's conduct to the conduct of the investigators and the process. Third, the rehabilitation of the deep state narrative. For years, Trump and his allies have invoked the specter of the deep state, a cabal of actors within government and allied institutions working against him. For many, that was a conspiratorial fantasy. But if a major social media platform was, in fact, suppressing or failing to disclose evidence that could exonerate a political figure, and that process was somehow intertwined with intelligence contacts, it lends a disturbing air of plausibility to the idea of a coordinated effort. Elon Musk has, intentionally or not, provided the documentary backbone for the argument that institutions were weaponized. This doesn't mean the entire deep state narrative is true, but it provides a tangible, verifiable hook upon which that entire theory can now hang. And in the court of public opinion, the visual, the memo, the timestamp, the digital proof is infinitely more powerful than the endless debate. The fallout is just beginning. The political establishment, the intelligence community, and the media are now forced to relitigate a history they thought was settled, all because of a single document released on the world's most influential digital public square. For Adam Schiff, the release of the integrity files isn't a political setback, it's an existential crisis. His career, his public trust, and his standing as a serious figure in Washington were built on the premise that he was dealing in irrefutable facts, especially concerning the Trump investigations. When the bombshell dropped, the initial reaction from Schiff's camp was telling, a delayed, almost stunned silence, followed by a carefully worded, highly technical denial. That delay spoke volumes. It signaled a frantic rush to verify not just the existence of the memo, but the surrounding context. Were they caught completely off guard? Almost certainly. The technical defense Schiff's subsequent public statement avoided the theatrical rhetoric Trump employed. It was not a grand defense, but a highly specific, defensive parsing of language. His legal team's argument boiled down to two key points. Was not in our possession. Schiff contended that the newly released internal memo, which flagged the source intelligence as synthetic, was never formally transmitted to the House Intelligence Committee or the broader intelligence community's official record that his committee reviewed. He is essentially saying, I did not ignore it. I was never shown it. The synthetic distinction. They argue that the word synthetic in the 2017 context of that platform was used to mean created by a non-human actor or digital influence operation, not necessarily fake or maliciously fabricated. This is a desperate, highly technical attempt to muddy the waters, to suggest that the document only proves the data was suspicious, which they claim they already acknowledged. However, this defense crumbles under the weight of the political reality. If a contemporaneous memo existed within a key allied corporation, explicitly warning that a piece of intelligence was likely bogus, regardless of the specific terminology, it creates an ethical and oversight chasm. Schiff's political obligation was to ensure the integrity of the process. His argument now shifts from, the evidence is sound, to, I am a victim of a systemic failure to share exculpatory or cautionary material. The American public, exhausted by years of legal hair-splitting, is unlikely to accept the latter. They see a single, stark image. A crucial warning was withheld, and a politician built his career on the assumption that the warning did not exist. The attack line, manufacturing the narrative Trump's political machine, newly energized by Musk's data dump, has already seized on this vulnerability. The attack is simple and devastating. Schiff didn't just make a mistake. He was actively managing a political narrative that required the suppression of inconvenient facts. The charge is now confirmation bias at best, and institutional fraud at worst. The timeline is the killer. The memo with the synthetic flag was written before some of Schiff's most emphatic public statements regarding the solidity of the evidence. Trump's allies are now playing those clips on an endless loop, juxtaposing Schiff's confident assertions against the newly revealed internal corporate warning. This is a fundamental breakdown of the political order. The man who once held the moral high ground on factual integrity is now on the defensive, forced to argue technicalities while his opponent wields literal digital receipts. The role of the deepfake warning there is a fascinating, almost ironic counterpoint emerging from Schiff's own past statements. He has been a prominent and vocal figure warning about the dangers of deep fakes and cheap fakes, manipulated video and audio, and the speed at which lies travel and corrupt the franchise. The core of his argument was that technology, specifically algorithms and manipulated content, amplifies divisions and provides adversaries with tools for mischief. Now, he is facing an accusation supported by digital evidence from one of the world's most powerful platforms, that the foundation of his own investigation was built on a piece of data that was, in the language of the time, effectively a digital fake. He has been hoisted by his own petard. His warnings about the perils of digital distortion are being used against him, arguing that he himself was misled by, or ignored warnings about, digitally compromised information. It transforms the crisis from a simple political spat into a profound commentary on the dangers of the modern information ecosystem. The immediate objective for Schiff is survival. He needs to convince the public that the fault lies with the intelligence delivery system, not his judgment or integrity, but against the simple, clear-cut text of the integrity files. That will be a monumentally difficult task. The investigation is no longer about Trump. It's about the integrity of the investigators. The political theater of the bombshell is just the opening act. The real damage from the integrity files will be measured in the courts and the halls of Congress, where the integrity of past and potentially current investigations now hangs in the balance. This is the phase where political rhetoric transitions into legal maneuvers and demands for official action. The weaponization of the memo, the specific legal implication of the withheld synthetic memo, is enormous. In a criminal or civil case, the non-disclosure of exculpatory or cautionary evidence, known as Brady material, is grounds for mistrial or vacating a conviction. While the Trump investigation was primarily an oversight function conducted by Congress, the principles of fairness and due process are still paramount. The core question for lawyers and lawmakers becomes, did the failure to provide the synthetic memo to the Congressional Oversight Committee materially prejudice the subject of that investigation? The answer, in the political sense, is undeniably yes. It allowed the investigation to proceed and Adam Schiff to advocate on a foundation of facts that were, internally to a key source, marked with a critical health warning. The legal and political teams aligned with Trump are now moving on two parallel tracks, challenging past findings. They are using the memo to argue that the past congressional reports and findings, particularly those driven by Schiff, are fundamentally tainted and must be formally withdrawn or, at the very least, heavily caveat. This is not about exoneration, but about officially declaring the work of the opposition invalid due to compromised inputs. Litigation for malfeasance. This is the high-risk, high-reward move. The Trump camp is exploring legal avenues to file civil suits against individuals and potentially institutions, alleging a deliberate systemic effort to suppress exculpatory evidence and mislead Congress. The target isn't just a political victory, it's the financial and reputational ruin of those involved. Proving malice is incredibly difficult, but the existence of the physical memo creates a powerful visual case for a jury. Congressional chaos, the demand for hearings in Congress, the release of the integrity files has done what years of political pressure could not. It has catalyzed a unified Republican demand for sweeping new oversight hearings. The focus of these proposed hearings is clear: investigate the investigators. The chain of custody, who within the intelligence apparatus and allied corporate entities received the synthetic memo, who made the explicit decision or error of omission that prevented it from being included in the materials shared with the House Intelligence Committee. These hearings will attempt to map the entire bureaucratic chain of custody for that single, devastating piece of evidence. Schiff's accountability. While Schiff maintains he never saw the memo, the hearings will probe his diligence. Did he, as the committee chair, establish procedures robust enough to flag dissenting or cautionary internal documents from key sources? The political opponents will argue that his desire to pursue a certain outcome led to institutional blindness. Legislative reform. Crucially, this event will be used to push for sweeping changes to how intelligence is shared between the executive branch, external contractors, and congressional oversight committees. Republicans are now demanding an exculpatory evidence mandate, a law that would impose criminal penalties for intentionally withholding exculpatory or cautionary information from duly authorized congressional oversight bodies. This legislative push is a direct response to the Musk leak, codifying the principles of the legal discovery process into the intelligence sharing framework. The precedent problem. This saga sets a profoundly unsettling precedent for the American political system. For the first time, a political actor, Elon Musk, has been able to leverage private, massive corporate assets to intervene directly in a decades-long political battle. He didn't just leak files. He executed a strategic, targeted release of documents to aid one political side against another. This raises significant and uncomfortable questions about the balance of power in the digital age. Billionaire oversight. Should the fate of high-stakes political investigations be determined by the discretionary release of proprietary data by a single, powerful corporate owner? It shifts power away from traditional mechanisms of subpoena and FOIA and places it in the hands of private oligarchs. The integrity of data. If key government investigations rely on data and communication flowing through private platforms, what is the required standard of care for flagging compromised or questionable source material? The fact that a synthetic warning was ignored or misplaced suggests that the reliance on private sector data was insufficiently regulated. The consequences for Adam Schiff are clear. His past work has been delegitimized in the eyes of his opponents and questioned by the public. But the consequences for the American system are far more reaching. The release of the integrity files has not ended the conflict. It has simply shifted the front line. The debate is no longer about Donald Trump's original conduct, but about the integrity of the institutions and individuals who sought to hold him accountable. The political weapon has been turned back on its wielder. This is the conclusion. The moment we assess the long-term, tectonic shift caused by this extraordinary collaboration between a former president and a powerful tech magnate. The integrity files aren't just a political scandal. They are a crucible for the future of democratic oversight in the digital age. The final impact extends far beyond the political career of Adam Schiff. It is about three profound and lasting wounds inflicted upon the American political ecosystem. 1. The death blow to institutional trust. The single greatest casualty of the synthetic memo reveal is public trust in the institutions of oversight and intelligence. Trust in government was already at anemic levels. This event, however, provides tangible, verifiable proof for the long-standing conservative assertion that key institutions, specifically the intelligence community and the congressional committees responsible for its oversight, can be compromised, either through malice or gross negligence. Erosion of the adult in the room narrative. For years, figures like Adam Schiff were framed by the media and the Democratic Party as the steady, reliable adults countering the chaos of the Trump administration. The revelation that their foundational evidence may have been compromised and that a key warning was missed or ignored shatters this image. It confirms the deepest skepticism of critics, that partisan political objectives trumped due diligence in the pursuit of a narrative. The intelligence community's reckoning. The intelligence community, I see, now faces a brutal internal examination. Why was a corporate document containing such a critical, cautionary flag not part of the official briefing materials given to Congress? Was it an institutional failure, a bureaucratic error, or an intentional withholding of potentially exculpatory evidence? The long-term consequence will be the implementation of stringent, legally mandated protocols, like the proposed exculpatory evidence mandate, which will fundamentally change the relationship between the IC and Congress, likely making it more adversarial and less cooperative. 2. The weaponization of the digital archive. Elon Musk's role establishes a terrifying new precedent for political warfare. He has demonstrated that ownership of the digital public square comes with the keys to an archive of historical, sensitive communications, a private data repository that can be strategically deployed as a massive political weapon. Musk didn't need a subpoena. He didn't need a whistleblower. He simply leveraged corporate acquisition to gain access to files that government prosecutors or congressional committees might spend years fighting for, if they even knew they existed. This transforms the relationship between big tech and government oversight. The platform owner is no longer a neutral utility. They are a political actor with the power to rewrite historical narratives by choosing what to disclose and when. Future disclosure wars. We should expect all future political confrontations to involve one side demanding the disclosure of internal corporate communications from social media, cloud providers, and other digital intermediaries. The focus will shift from what the government knows to what the major tech platforms are holding. The new kingmakers. Musk has positioned himself, and, by extension, other tech oligarchs, as the arbiters of political truth, capable of dropping a digital sword that cuts through established governmental authority. This elevates private economic power to a new, unprecedented level of political influence, sidelining traditional democratic checks and balances. 3. A redefinition of conspiracy theory. One of the most insidious long-term consequences is the erosion of the distinction between legitimate oversight and conspiratorial speculation. For years, many of the claims surrounding the original intelligence, that it was manufactured, manipulated, or planted, were dismissed by mainstream media and political figures as baseless conspiracy theories. The integrity files do not prove the entire conspiracy theory is true, but they provide a factual anchor for the most extreme claims. The existence of a verifiable, cautionary memo that was withheld validates the core suspicion that the information presented to the public was, at best, incomplete, and at worst, intentionally deceptive. This will have a lasting effect on media consumption and public discourse. Further fragmentation of media. Mainstream media outlets that initially dismissed the possibility of compromised evidence now face a reckoning. Their past certainty has been undermined by the verifiable actions of a corporate executive. This will drive audiences further toward niche media that are willing to entertain and often promote skepticism toward official narratives. The perpetual what if. Every future investigation, regardless of the subject, will be haunted by the question, is this the next synthetic memo? Skepticism of authority will cease to be a fringe position. It will become the default mode of public engagement. Conclusion, the new political reality. Adam Schiff's stunned reaction is the lasting image of this moment. It represents the shocked realization that the established guardrails of the American political process have been breached, not by a hostile foreign power, but by a combination of internal bureaucratic failure and the sheer disruptive force of weaponized data. The old era, where powerful congressional figures could rely on the unquestioned integrity of intelligence shared through formal channels, is over. The new era is defined by the three words that destroyed a career and validated a movement. The flag is synthetic. The political war is no longer fought on the ground of ideology, but on the shifting, unstable terrain of digital evidence, and who has the power to release it. Thank you for watching this video. Click here to watch another video that might interest you.